Before I begin, it is important to recognize the Tohono Nation is one of the 5 O'odham bands, along with the Gila River, Ak-Chin, Salt River Indian communities, as well as the Hiased O'odham and the bands Mexico. The most are Tohono O'odham and of Hiased O'odham descent. All these bands share the O'odham language and a common culture, with small amounts of variation in dialects. Today, I'm mainly going to be focused on the Tohono O'odham Nation, as they are federally recognized and share a border with Mexico. But I will also mention the Hiased O'odham when in relation to the border wall construction, as they are also located along the border. The O'odham will also be frequently used when relating to the shared effects of all bands. And lastly, I want to note that the following actions executed by the federal government impacts all O'odham nations, with varying intensities based on location to the border. And with that clarification out of the way, we can dive into the struggle, starting with the lands inhabited by the O'odham before political boundaries, the Papaheria. And this lands basin encompasses east of the San Pedro River to the Gulf of California, and from central Arizona south to Sonora, Mexico, and is where the O'odham originated from and have many cultural sites on either side of the border. In 1853, the Gaston Purchase, as seen in the upper right-hand picture, bisected the O'odham lands with the current border. The only silver lining at the time was the relative ease of travel across the border, as there were very few federal agents guarding the border, and their main focus was stopping Chinese railroad workers trying to cross into Mexico. Even with the establishment of the Border Patrol in 1924, the focus was on illegal transportation of alcohol at the time, not the travel of O'odham natives across the border. And naturally, over time, the Border Patrol grew numbers, resources, control, and the security measures they needed to carry out. And starting in the 1990s, a massive increase of resources was pushed to border security, starting with the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigration Responsibility Act, the IIRA, spotlighting the necessity of border security and increasing fines and bans for illegal crossing into the US. The 9/11 attacks caused national security to become a mainstream issue for all political parties and caused the federal government to increase the security of the borders, specifically the US and Mexico border. And following in 2005, the Real ID Act forced all peoples crossing to have passports and proper identification in order to get to either side of the border. Additionally, it allowed the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, to waive US laws to secure the border. A year later, the Secure Fences Act was an initiative to build barriers and walls to stop pedestrians and vehicles from illegally immigrating into the US. Each of these acts forced the Tohono O'odham Nation to comply with stricter measures and reduce the cultural migrations of all O'odham nations and communities due to the difficulty time and many requirements needed to cross. As per federal regulations, the Tohono O'odham Nation has funded its own enforcement of the border, including building barriers, tracking towers, and creating its own ICE tracking unit, the Shadow Wolves. Then, the newest illegal immigration measure, the border wall, started construction in 2007 and has since destroyed many significant O'odham cultural sites. I'll start with Quito Paquito Springs, one of the last natural water sources on O'odham lands, which is a cultural site for an annual salt pilgrimage and for burial grounds. The current drought would have caused lower water levels normally, but the pumping of the groundwater for construction has dramatically reduced and caused most of the spring to be cracked mud absent of water. The burial grounds nearby have been partly bulldozed without consulting the tribe, and with the knowledge that the Park Service recognizes this area as a burial grounds. And then the blasting of Monument Hill, a widely known Hiased O'odham resting ground and a deeply religious ceremonial site for the O'odham people. Even the federal government has surveyed 5 separate archaeological sites, which should have stopped the construction of the border wall. But the blasting continued without any regard or notice for the O'odham community. The Tohono O'odham Nation has been ignored, and even if the construction is stopped, the damage of the O'odham cultural sites has already been done.